So I just got to see The Iron Claw, the brand new film starring Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White that tells the story of the Von Erich pro wrestling family, a famous family that had a bunch of crazy shit happen to them in the late 70s, early 1980s. Now, I am a very, very big pro wrestling fan. I enjoy all of it. I've been a wrestling fan for a long time, and I've been very, very well aware of the Von Erich story throughout my life, and the Von Erich story is one of the craziest things ever, and when I heard they were adapting it to film, I got kind of excited, because this is a story that you can't really get wrong. And then when I heard that that Zac Efron would be the star and it would be produced by A24, I mean, how can you mess this up? And I'm happy to say that they didn't really mess it up. Now, did they hit it out of the ballpark? Is this one of the best films of the year? I don't know. I'm not even sure this movie kind of stands up to something like The Wrestler, Darren Aronofsky's wrestling movie. But I did really, really enjoy this movie, and I think it does a lot of stuff right, so I'm gonna get right into it. First off, I need to talk about the performances. Zac Efron, everybody's been talking about this is the best performance of his career. I don't know if I'd go that far. There are a lot of performances of his that I really, really like, but he is definitely extremely strong here. This is an incredibly emotional role where he had to do a lot of emotional and outwardly loud things in his performance, and he did a very, very good job doing that. He also had to show up when it comes to like getting his body in shape. This was essentially a superhero role, getting into extremely bulked shape, and I don't know if he took steroids or whatever, but he looked damn good in this. And also, he actually did a lot of the wrestling stuff in here, and wrestling is not exactly easy. This is something that people train years for just to look, you know, even okay at when they're in the ring, and he did a great job selling the fact that he knows how to wrestle. He took bumps well, he did some stuff with Chavo Guerrero that I thought was great. Jeremy Allen White, though, was the standout here. I think everything he does is a standout, everything he's in, he's amazing in The Bear, and he's just amazing here. I actually wish there was more of his character, because I think Kerry Von Erich is by far the most interesting person out of the entire family. He had one of the greatest stories that I'm not going to spoil anything about, and I definitely think what they did show of it was really, really great, and I almost kind of wish that the film centered on him instead of Kevin Von Erich, but either way, he still did an amazing job at what he was given. And the movie does tell the story well enough. It hits all of the beats of what actually happened to this family, and it depicts each one of these characters well, and it is sort of accurate to what actually happened, besides the fact that Mike Von Erich was a normal-heighted guy, when in real life, the whole thing with Mike Von Erich is that he was kind of tiny, and that's why he couldn't be great at wrestling. But I do have some problems, and my problems mainly go to what I imagined a Von Erich biopic would have looked like, things that I wish that he would have done, and how they actually did the story, pacing-wise, and how they depicted some of the events. I will say the first act of this movie is not the best thing ever. The first act moves really slow, and it kind of takes a while to set the table and get into the story. Now, you have to establish each member of the Von Erich family. You have to establish the father, this patriarchy of this household, and the whole how they connect to the wrestling industry as a whole. That's a lot to introduce in a short period of time, and they managed to do it in a decent way, but overall, it felt like it just moved really, really slow. And then once you start to get into the second act of the movie, and then overall into the third act, the movie has now moved into a faster pace, and things are starting to happen. But even in the second and the third acts of this movie, I just felt like there was kind of something missing a little bit. It felt like it was still moving slow, and it was following this predictable path of just hitting on things that it needed to hit on, but not giving enough time for some of those things to fully establish themselves and feel as emotionally potent as they needed to be. And there are some things that the Von Erich family went through and some things that happened that the film decides not to completely shed light on and not show, which kind of disappointed me, because knowing the story of the Von Erichs and knowing a lot of the crazy shit that they've done, there are some things that I was expecting to be in this movie that I was excited to see put to film that just weren't here at all, and that was a little bit disappointing for me personally, but I suppose if you don't know anything about the Von Erichs, that will not be a disappointment for you. And that's why my disappointment with this movie kind of connects towards my disappointment with the Killers of the Flower Moon movie, because I had read the book for that film, I had been well aware of the story of the Osage people, and I had this idea of how they were going to adapt that story, and I had this film in my mind that this is how they're going to do it, it's the perfect way to do it, it's so easy, and it's going to be amazing, and they ended up doing it a way that I would not have done myself personally, and that kind of took away from the film for me, and this is another kind of example of that, maybe in a lesser way than Killers of the Flower Moon, but still, I had this idea in my mind of what this movie would be like, and I'm not entirely sure the entire thing hit on that. A lot of it did, but not the entire thing. I also felt like this film's sound supervision, or music supervision, was kind of underwhelming. It's just, the film uses a bunch of songs that I feel have been used in just about any movie taking place in the 80s ever, and it just uses songs that you see in every movie these days, and I just wish the film had, instead of using 80s music, I probably would have appreciated a much louder and exciting or original score for the film. I feel like it could have really benefited from that, especially to match the emotion of the movie, versus just using songs that are in any single movie that has anything to do with the 80s. It made the film feel more generic than I wanted it to be. I also really like the guy that plays Ric Flair. I'm not sure of his name, but the guy that did Ric Flair was really great, really funny. He wasn't exactly Ric Flair-ish, but yeah, professional wrestling-wise, great promo that he cuts. I was also disappointed, like, I saw MJF was in the cast, and he's just, like, on screen for half a second, and, like, the character that he plays, there is a really fun story there in real life, but the film just, outside of showing him on camera for a couple seconds, doesn't ever actually do anything with that character or that story, which is a shame, because it's really incredible what they did with that. Honestly, the whole Von Erich family, like, I recommend watching this movie, getting the broad and basic information of what happened to this family, and then going and reading a book on the Von Erichs or watching a documentary and getting the full story, because an hour-long documentary, honestly, that I've watched in the past gave me more information and more insight on the insides of this family than this movie, and that's kind of a little bit disappointing. But I also understand pacing-wise, you're trying to go through like a 15-20 year history in 2 hours. It's hard to do in a film, in a cinematic film form. A documentary, it's easier, because a documentary is just explaining information to the audience, whereas this, you have to tell a story. But overall, I really enjoyed the Iron Claw. I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So that's the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe for more. Make sure to turn on notifications. Click the video on your screen right now, and I'll see you in the next one.